15 minutes after 3 o'clock, In-Depth Radio in Toronto, Newstalk 1010. Matt Mernagh in a second. He's our bureau chief when it comes to, and he's Canada's cannabis champion. I don't know how you get that title, but we'll find out in a second. And again, happy to be joined by James Guirac. He's part of law enforcement against prohibition. My only problem with this whole thing is that illegal growers, I don't think that they're going to say, oh, well, I guess the government's doing this now or looking after this now. I'm not going. I think they would be more than willing to compete against the taxed and licensed stuff.
Well, what's going to happen is the price is going to plummet. Instead of the drug gangs and the cartels imposing regulations, what's sold, how strong is it, how old do you have to be, where can you buy it, those rules are going to be put in place by government, just as we did with alcohol, where it used to be the Al Capones of the world decided what the rules of sale would be and how much it cost. And under the new paradigm of drug control and regulation, just as after alcohol prohibition, the Al Capones are going to be driven out of business. Now, if they want to sell to persons who are under 21, well, that'll still be a market and that'll still be unlawful, but we'll have room for those folks. Unlike right now, where we're even consenting adults over the age of 21, and in some cases people who are medicinal clients and need marijuana for medicine can't lawfully imbibe.
All right.
So what's going to change is the economics of prohibition that takes something that grows on a plant and makes it the most valuable commodity on the face of the earth.
Interesting. James, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
The website is LEAP. Matt Mernagh, who is our chief marijuana correspondent, and also Canada's cannabis champion. How have you maintained that position as Canada's marijuana or cannabis champion for so long, Matt?
Well, we're still waiting for the Ontario Court of Appeal to issue a ruling in my case that will strike down both possession and personal production for Canadians.
And when's that going to happen?
Well, your guess is as good as mine.
Oh, really? There's not a date that you're expecting it to come out?
No, they just tell us.
All right.
In this day.
So, obviously, you've been crusading for this for a while. How did you feel when you saw it happen in Colorado and also Washington?
They both have great ideas, and, Colorado, you can grow 6 plants for yourself. It's a great start. Anyone can do that. In Washington's great is that they're actually going to have marijuana sales through their government control board, if I've read that law correctly, and yeah. I think that's wonderful. I'd like to sell marijuana in Washington State.
Listen, for those people who just heard our guest, who is a former prosecutor, talk about how stupid our new laws are, he's not alone. I mean, guys like Newt Gingrich are on the same page about the monies and the lives that they've wasted over a ridiculous war on drugs that has not worked and makes less sense than some silly war on Christmas. But I just wonder about the economics about people who are doing it on the black market and how willingly they will go away. I guess our last guest said that the economics will mean, hey, if you're not making any money, you'll have to change your game plan.
Well, that's true. We're seeing it now. You definitely have growers that aren't supporting these initiatives. And it happened in Washington, happened in Colorado, and it's happening here in Canada. Growers are wisening up and saying, hey, this is my income. I want it illegal. And that's not where I stand. I want it legalized.
But here's the question, Matt. Does legalizing it get rid of grow-ops? So I'm not moving into a house that was used to, and is full of mold that was used to grow I don't know how many plants.
I believe it does. I believe that you will not be able to compete against a legal marijuana grow versus an illegal grow. If a grow is put in a greenhouse that was 20 acres, if you're growing 20 acres of marijuana in a greenhouse, there is no way you'd be able to compete in a house. That house grower is not going to be able to compete against the greenhouse grower.
And, does Molson, would a beer company want to get involved in growing this stuff if you could? We're going to be buying it in pharmacies, or where are we going to be buying it?
We're going to be buying it in the LCBO, or as I call it, the Cannabis Control Board of Ontario, and if Labatt or Molson wants to give me a ringy-ding-ding, they're more than welcome to. I I believe that we should be selling it in the LCBO. I mean, imagine on a Friday night the amount of phone calls people won't have to make if they can just pick up marijuana on the way home from work.
It was interesting that you said earlier that 6 plants are allowed in Washington and in Colorado. 6 plants. Folks, under the new legislation that went into effect here in Canada about a year ago, 6 plants, you know what that is?
2 months. Yeah.
A mandatory minimum of 2 years. That's what the new legislation, 6 plants in those countries will be allowed. 6 plants now in this country is considered a grow-op. 6 plants is considered a grow-op, and certainly that goes to show that we are going in the wrong direction. Matt, some final comments.
Well, I want to tax and regulate it. I think if Molson's wants to sell marijuana in a LTO-like outlet, let's do it. I mean, I think it's time to have a serious debate and discussion on the issue of taxing and regulating marijuana, if only to save the provinces of Ontario financially and right down to our city budget that we just talked about. Why aren't we taxing these vapor lounges and allowing them to sell marijuana to people?
There you go. Matt, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Matt Mernagh, Marijuana Bureau Chief and Canada's Cannabis Champion. I don't know what any of that means, but I'm sure that it's good. Eugene, you're on In-Depth Radio News Talk 1010. Eugene?
Hi, how are you?
Good, go ahead.
Good, I got a few points. Number one, I don't think that the underground economy is going to go anywhere like you think. You've got all the underage people are going to want to get it. The other thing is, do you think the government's going to be cheap on this stuff? So the private sector will just undercut them. They might not make as much money, but it's going to be a supply and demand, and they'll just lower the price. And a lot of people, you think about it, I don't think I would want to walk into a pot LCBO store and have people know, let's say I'm a professional person or whatever, and I don't want it to be knowledge that I get high.
Well, I don't know. To me, if you smoke one joint on a Saturday night, it's better than the guy who's going to pound back a bottle of scotch or Jack Daniels. Here's George on In-Depth Radio News Talk 1010. George? And by the way, legalizing it would eventually destigmatize it. George, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Basically, I have to agree with the last caller. I mean, both me and my wife smoke marijuana on occasion at nighttime. And basically, what a joke, your guest saying that it would be cheaper if it was sold by a monopoly like the LCBO. I mean, we're paying the highest cost for alcohol in Ontario because of the LCBO. And, I mean, I do know some people who get government marijuana because of their health conditions, and it's not as potent, and it does cost more.
Well, that's the problem right there. And, Chris, you're the final call on In-Depth Radio News Talk 1010.
Hey, Jim. I think there's been many, many examples. Anytime the government gets involved and starts regulating and selling something, the price goes through the roof. And, in fact, I would argue that them getting in, look, they're zero now with the cigarettes.
Sure.
It's a perfect example. I think there's two separate issues that seem to get blended together. One is making it legal to, grow and possess and smoke it, and then having the government take it over as a business, which I think is a terrible idea.
Well, especially I think you're exactly right, Chris, and I got to run along. That's why I'm trying to shoosh you off here. But I think you're exactly right that the government will take it over, and the price point will be not competitive with the underground market, and the underground market won't go away, and the government will find a way to what it up so they won't get maximum money out of it. All right, on In-Depth Radio in Toronto, News Talk 1010.